I'm here at School Farm Studios with engineer Stefano Civetta.
Welcome.
And we're going to have a look around this amazing complex that's full of amazing equipment, very, very old barns, alpacas, pools, lakes, all sorts of stuff. You're going to have a great time on this video. So let's go and check it out.
Let's go. Come on.
Wow!
It's not bad, is it?
No, this is super amazing.
So the barn used to be literally a barn. Andrew's tool shed was in there, the ducks were there, the horses were here. So it's been completely, we built basically a barn over the barn, not to lose any internal footprint. We kept all the original beams. The only bit that's completely new is the control room, so that's floated as well.
Yeah.
So we got two booths here, a big booth back here and a smaller booth over there.
So I can see three pianos.
There is a standard Yamaha U3, which is a piano that Andrew had in the house.
Yeah.
We decided to bring it over just to give different colors, basically.
Yeah. The Steinway.
The Model D is fantastic. It's just one of the best grands I've ever heard.
I assume it gets a lot of use.
It gets used very much. Yeah, we are lucky enough that even Steinway sends us people to record pianos because we have been recommended by Steinway.
John Brinsmead and Sons.
That's the best piano in terms of value versus usage. So this piano cost £20. The delivery was more expensive than the actual piano. And as an Abbey Road tribute, we call it the Mrs. Mills, even though it's not exactly the Mrs. Mills. But yeah, it's one of those. It's one of those, you know.
And organ?
Yes.
What have
we got a fantastic Hammond C3. This has been
with a Leslie?
Yes, with a Leslie 147 over there.
As is necessary.
Yeah, you have to. This was recommended to us by James Taylor of the James Taylor Quartet, who knows a thing or two about Hammonds.
Yeah. When you have string sections in or whatever, so are you putting some of them in this section and some here?
Depends on the numbers. So if it's, we tend to do, say the biggest one we've got is 8 first, 8 seconds, 6 viola, 4 cello, 2 double basses. Yeah. So we would put the conductor sort of here. And we tend to put them antiphonal, which means violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello, basses. So all of them in the same room. Luckily, we can fit them.
Cool.
Then, of course, we use the booths for overdubs or stuff like that, or whatever needs separation.
And there's booths. There's booths that we haven't even looked at.
Yes, there's booths.
So let's look at the drum booth. This is rather nice.
This is not too bad. So yeah, we've got...
look at these beams.
We've got a drum set for... we've got a session tomorrow with James Taylor Quartet, funny enough. And yeah, we've got a drum kit from the British Drum Company. It's an amazing kit. It's an amazing piece of kit.
We're at School Farm Studios in the smallest booth, which is currently being used for storage. But again, a beautiful room.
But yeah, we tend to put either amps in here, or vocals. It's still, even if you're vocal, sometimes you get crammed into very small booths for vocals. You still have a bit of space around you.
Yeah. Again, a beautiful patch panel here with the logo and everything. And again, I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'3", so
I'm not.
I'm fine under these beams.
It's not my concern.
So what's this area of the studio all about?
So this is the pod of judgment, as one of our musician's friend call it. Andrew likes to say here just to have a very close eye contact with the musicians. We're both in the communication, both visual and audio is paramount. So we got make sure that the talkback works fine, the camera system works fine. If you've got eye contact, even better. And also gives us. It's one of the few studios with natural lights, both on the left and right hand side. The musicians like to see people in the control room. They feel a bit more engaged rather than having I don't know, people behind a wall or upstairs or whatever, it's very nice to be able to, you know, just in a normal situation to look to a person and look at them in the face.
I see a big SSL.
Yes, we're lucky enough to have a Duality 48. Very flexible, very useful for what we do. At the beginning we were thinking about going down the DAW controller, but then since we mostly record, and I was lucky enough to work for a few years at Abbey Road, I sort of got used to large format consoles, so I felt like I sort of, I would have been missing some of the features of a console. When it comes to do headphones feeds and stuff like that, we can use either the analog circuitry or we also have a Dante system, so that allows us to be very flexible. It's very flexible in terms of printing live mixes while recording for overdubs and stuff like that. There's the 24 extra buses. Basically, you name it, you've got it.
Yeah,
so, very lucky.
Super versatile. So you got ATCs in a Atmos?
Correct, 741. Right. The only thing that's not ATCs is the sub, which is the Genelec.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Tons of outboard, knee pre's.
Yeah.
Everything you could ask for, really.
It's stuff that I know how it behaves,
yeah.
And again, I was lucky enough to be able to use it when I was working in London.
Yeah.
I know what you can get out of it, and I think it looks good, and it makes us look clever.
There's something nice about having a rack full of gear, isn't there?
I do like
just computers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the books. Of course.
The books, yes, those are all Andrew's dad's book, who used to be a barrister.
Right.
I got a book called Speak Italian for Andrew, so he can tell me what to do. Yeah, and it feels like home.
This is quite nice as well. I like the sort of the separation with the desk and so on. You know,
it's practical because it's nice to have, say, the clients or sometimes the composers if they're not conducting.
So we're doing a lot of orchestral stuff, I guess. You need tables to put
scores and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. So it's nice to have them there. They've got their own space if they need laptops and stuff like that, rather than cramming everything onto the desk. It's quite nice to have. Also, if you've got guests, maybe person who are not directly involved in the sessions, there is a little bit of space for that, rather than standing awkwardly in front of the right surround, which it's usually what happens in another control room. Yeah.
And also, come over here. Look how pro these guys are. They even have branding on all of their patch plates. And,
so you can nick it, that's why.
Everything. Lovely.
This is probably the first place that people see when they come here, so we wanted to give them a sort of a welcome with a cup of tea and or a cup of coffee.
So that's the control room?
Correct, yeah, the control room. The studio develops this way.
Yeah.
We are lucky enough to have quite a beautiful outdoors area as well.
Alpacas on the lawn.
Alpacas down there. We got four.
Who are hiding.
4 alpacas at the moment.
And
we got a very big garden. We got a pool. We got an outdoor area.
So this outdoor area is actually, there's a good point here. It's kind of geared for bigger groups as well.
Yes.
So you can see it's like orchestral level of, there's enough seats for a small.
Yeah, we tend to have, say, on one day we could have up to 25, 30 people. So we'd rather fit them comfortably than cramming them into a small room. When it rains, we still have a bit of a cover outside. So, but you see a lot of musicians during the lunch break. They take off and just go for a walk on the farm to meet the alpacas.
The annex. This is the annex.
There's 2 bedrooms with ensuite if the ensemble is not too big and we just need fewer people to accommodate. And of course, like every living room.
Look at this view. Look at this view.
It's not bad, is it? And a feature that I think it should be in every living room is 16 tie lines.
Definitely.
With 4 bucks, SDIs, network. This is a feature of every living room. So yeah, we use this space to record.
That's tie line 97 to 112, by the way. So you're quite well equipped in the studio there.
we got a few meters of copper, luckily.
And it's a great little
it's self-contained, effectively. If you've got clients, they want some privacy, they got everything here. So they literally could roll out of bed, plug the guitar in, record it, and go back to bed if they want to. And cook themselves a lovely meal.
It's a common thing for guitarists.
Yes.
So, Another room, kitchen.
Yeah, kitchen.
Acoustically slightly different. And look at these doors. Look at that.
And he's very good at finding stuff.
Beautiful.
And yeah,
and bedroom and ensuite bathroom.
yes, and the same thing down the
And
other end.
is there another bedroom and?
Yes. There's also a bigger accommodation farmhouse, which is literally 2 miles as the crow flies that way.
Right.
There's got 8 bedrooms, all with ensuites as well. So that's also part of the, shall we call it, the school farm estate as such.
Yeah.
This is over your head.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And we've got a plethora of guests. We've got Bob.
Yes.
We've got Groucho.
Groucho, yeah.
And 2 humans.
Could say that, possibly.
You've probably met Stefano before. And Andy? Is it Andy or Andrew?
It's Andrew.
Andrew.
It has to be said.
Andrew.
And shall I just tell you a little bit about how I know this man?
This chap here, or this chap?
No, I'm not going to tell you about the cat.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, so Steph will never blow his own trumpet, so I'm going to have to do it for him. This man started as the organist for the Pope in the Vatican when he was a little lad. Well, he's still quite little,
right?
But he was even littler. And was there for 7 years playing in St. Peter's. And then decided... It's quite a remarkable story. And then decided that he wanted to work at Abbey Road.
Okay.
So left Italy and came over and worked at Abbey Road. And whenever I was on sessions, I, whenever possible, always asked for Steph, because Steph's ability of note checking scores and so on is really second to none.
I'm very good at being a pain, but that's what you say.
But he's the only person I know who can immediately see the wrong note in the violas, which is an obscure stave that I still struggle with. So I always had Steph on sessions, and then after one of the sessions, Steph pretty much announced, Groucho's coming home.
You said
all as well. Steph suddenly announced that he was going to work here.
Right. Okay.
And we hadn't built the studio at this stage, by the way. There was still a horse in here and ducks over there. And I said, well, we haven't got a studio yet. And Stefano reassuringly nodded at me and said, oh, you soon will. And moved down, I think, the day before COVID.
The day before lockdown, yeah.
Yeah. And the rest, as you might say, is history.
It's kind of is, isn't it? Because this is a very historical based space. And you've brought it into the 21st. Oh, come on then. The 21st century by turning this working space into a working space.
Well, what we did, so the barn, I mean, some of the beams, like the beam over there, I gather is 1300s.
Yes.
So some of the beams are really ancient, but this barn in its current sort of form, if you like, was built in the 1700s.
Yeah.
And what we had to do to get the acoustics right is to build a barn over it. So you can see the walls are massively thick, but of course they weren't built that way. So in fact, the outer barn is much bigger than you think it should be. When you get inside, it's more sort of TARDIS in reverse.
And it was Chris who did the...
It was, Chris Hill. So he did all the acoustic work. And then because it was COVID, we couldn't have specialist studio people here.
Right.
So he just had to draw up the plans, and we basically, the local builders, who are fantastic, just had to interpret them.
Okay.
Chris would come down regularly and check it.
And keep an eye on
But of course it was difficult because, we forget now, don't we, how difficult it was.
You can get anything. You
couldn't get anything. Well, we could actually see the materials we needed for the barn in the builder's yard, which was locked up. And you could look over that and say, that's what we need. And we couldn't actually get it. So there were some frustrations. But then nobody ever said building a studio should be without frustrations.
No. You have to be a bit crazy.
Basically, if you're watching this and thinking of doing it, don't. It's a silly thing to do.
Definitely don't.
Yeah.
And of course, there was the electronics shortage as well. So I believe you're still waiting on some parts.
A couple of bits and bobs, yeah. Well, luckily we found the balance.
A very well provisioned studio. I mean, this is some serious kit here. What was it like? How did you decide what route to go down for the gear?
Steph. That's definitely Steph's area. I'd have gone for a tape recorder, but he said no.
Well, at the beginning we were thinking of going down, controller, maybe the S6 or S4, something like that. But then, since we realized that we would mostly be recording here, and as Andrew said, I was lucky enough to work at Abbey Road for a few years, and coming from sort of the experience of large format consoles, we still needed something that was quite close to it. So we went down the SSL duality route, which we are very happy about. And then in terms of infrastructure, we thought that we should have a nice sort of combination of analog and digital. So we got Dante, we got Madi, we got analog headphones, Dante headphones. So we got a couple of rigs so that we got a backup system. So that's via Madi. We got the RMU via Madi. Speaking of shortage, for example, we couldn't get the Dante.
Absolutely.
But you've got Choco as well, haven't you? So is everything tracked constantly? Is that?
We can, we got we got the possibility of tracking everything. And in case the Mac Pro dies, we've got a second rig with 16 inputs.
Yeah.
So we can still, worse comes to worse, we can still do the session.
And if we have a power cut, we have a generator outside which automatically cuts in.
Yeah.
Because it has been known for there to be power cuts in this
Yes.
neck of the woods. And actually we can just carry on completely working.
You're fairly rural.
Yeah.
These things happen.
Well, I think in a way, you have a responsibility with the studio to make sure you've really thought through.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a hostage to fortune. Anything can happen. A hurricane can hit. God knows what can happen. But actually, you have to make your best endeavours to make sure that you're not. You might have, very valuable. We record a lot of chamber orchestras in here, or choirs. And actually, if people have come all the way out of London, suddenly it's just not okay to say we can't finish the session. So you have to make sure that you have absolutely everything in place to be as robust as possible.
Well, that brings me to the question: what kind of projects are you recording here?
I mean, everything. I mean, everyone says that, don't they? But I suppose that we've got a particular reputation. We've got these three remarkable and different pianos that we use a lot.
Which you can see on the studio tour.
Yes.
So watch that video. Will be
Thing.
There'll be a link.
Yes.
Links.
But we do a lot of strings and brass.
Yeah.
Big band. Done quite a fair bit of that. And because we're sort of lucky enough to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 separate recording spaces, that's useful for certain types of productions. But I mean, we quite frequently would have. We think we could get up to 88642, which is 24 players, is it? 28 players.
Yeah.
In here, so that would be probably our maximum.
Yeah.
But we've done lots of things of similar size to that. I think that's true to say. Maybe a little smaller.
Yeah.
88642 is quite a squeeze.
In the live area.
In the live area.
But there's some the big sort of hall section here, isn't there? And it's deceptively large, I think, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the nice thing, it works best set out antiphonally for people who are interested in that sort of thing, just because of the shape of the room.
Yeah.
And we have mics in the ceiling
Yes.
as well, which we can use for Atmos. And I think from a point of view of a studio outside London, the unusual thing about it is that it's got, I hope and believe, excellent, mics and recording facilities.
Sure.
But also, the sort of on the mixing side, being able to do Atmos properly and having a room bespoke built for it, not retrofitted for Atmos, makes a big difference. And we're certainly finding that's a growing part of the business.
And you finding that that's required in most projects, or?
Well, as I understand it, and I'm no expert, but increasingly the DSPs want immersive sound, and they want and which can be generated from Atmos. So there's more and more demand on it, and quite a few people just want to hear it. They just want their project, something they love. Yeah, they want to mix it in Atmos so that it's available for people who have the facility to listen to it. But I mean, I can't think that there are that many people who can listen back to it unless they happen to live in a cinema.
I think the world's going to change at some point as well, isn't there? With people having these systems at home and so on. So. Headphones. And
well, as I understand, it's getting better and better. The algorithms.
Yeah, for sure. So, you mentioned that you weren't following all of the technical details. Why what's your role in music?
Very good question.
How did you get into
Yes, that's a good question.
What let's what was
What am I doing here?
What was the first instrument that you played?
Piano.
There you go.
Right. Okay.
Why did you play piano?
Because I had a piano.
But-
This is why music education is so important.
Yeah.
You've got to give people opportunities to have instruments,
Yeah.
to have a chance to see what they can do. There must be all sorts of people out there who are musicians because there was an opportunity, or because there was a teacher who inspired them, or because simple as they just had access to an instrument. And so, that's one of the many themes I rant on.
And then it just carried on. Then.
Well, I set up a company called Audio Network, which people might know it provides music. It's a music library which provides music for film and television. And we were lucky that the business sort of, the wind caught the sails, as it were, and it became a significant company doing that. And I produced, originally all of their music, but latterly all of their orchestral music. So that's why I was recording so much at Abbey Road, and which is probably the main studio that we used.
And you were a big customer of Abbey Road's.
No, we were. I was saying earlier that we did some sums, and I think the year before COVID we did 90 days there in the year. So we were there a lot and have been for years and years, which is great because it means that you build up a really solid team. Steph was part of it, but the copyists we use, just knowing everyone in the building means that you're always going to be, working with people who basically become friends. And my biggest role, you asked me what my role is actually to make things feel fun on the session. That's my job. If everyone comes in and they're having a nice time, they're smiling, they feel respected and looked after, you end up with a great project. I never understand why people shout at each other. That shouldn't be a thing in a studio. It really shouldn't. These are creative people. Let them be creative.
Yeah.
And so I like to think we have a lot of fun on the sessions, lots of leg pulling, which comes with the privilege of having done it for a long time. So people.
Yeah.
The glass shouldn't exist in a studio. The control room and the live room needs to be one.
And you've got this pod.
And my pod
what do you call
judgment.
it? Pod of judgment.
Yes, pod of judgment.
Pod of judgment.
So I can sit just the other side there and glare out the window.
No, I saw this on the photos before I came here, and I was like, "Oh, this is a fantastic idea." But actually seeing it in person, it's brilliant. It's almost like you're sort of in the live room. With
sometimes not a good thing. and it
just be careful if you're like texting.
Yeah, it means I've got to look like I'm paying attention, and not to sit there picking my nose, because otherwise I will get noticed.
That's a good point. Maybe you need one of those, sort of Odyssey screens.
we were actually considering that. Do you remember? We were thinking about
the glass that changes colour.
Exactly. Not because we ever have used it, but because it would have been great to have had it.
Brilliant.
Well, it was a gadget opportunity. Sorry, Steph, you should be talking about gadgets, not me.
Please make yourself at home.
Dear. So would you say your role? Are you officially the producer on these projects?
Yeah. So for Audio Network, so with the studio, I can of course help on the sessions if people want to come here and use the studio and they want me to. Of course, I'm happy to. I love it, but by no means do you have to use me. You're much better to use him. He knows what everything does and make it all work. But so, when Audio Network finally decide they've had enough of me and boot me out, I'll probably end up making sandwiches for everyone. That'll be fine, so long as I'm on the team.
They're going to be good sandwiches.
They're going to be great sandwiches. They're going to be really good sandwiches.
So I guess we could kind of touch on. I'm a sort of a non-knowing member of the public, and I say, well, what is this? What is sync? What is library music? What is it, and why does that happen?
Okay, so the majority of music that anyone would hear, say on television, not necessarily in films, which were slightly different, but on the radio, on TV, maybe on videos, on YouTube or whatever, will be music that comes from a stock source, which traditionally has always been called library music, which was an industry that really started properly in the 1950s. And there were more and more libraries, and there were some really good ones, and there were some absolutely awful ones. And what was happening before Audio Network was there was an awful lot of stuff being done with samples and being done fake. And I think, well, there were various things that Audio Network wanted to do differently, but one of the big things was our absolute commitment from the beginning that everything we record had to be real.
Yeah.
So if it's a piano, it's going to be a real piano. If it's strings, it's going to be real strings or real brass, whatever it might be. And if you're going to record music, Brazilian music, you record it in Brazil with people who do that all the time. So that was sort of the thing, and that remains to this day. And I'm very proud that at Audio Network, our first 4 albums, when we had no money at all, were all orchestral. You know, so that was and what was happening in the late 80s was everyone had a bedroom studio and everyone could do, you know, pretty good music for TV. But actually what was happening was the standard music was going down because it was being done by people who didn't do it all the time. So our idea was to start up Audio Network, which is like any other library in that it has music in every possible style you can imagine. But with the way we recorded it. And also the other thing we did was we provided it with stems and lots of mixes and versions so that people could use it. They could sync it with a film, which is why we talk about sync. And they could almost make it feel like it was a specially composed score because there were so many different sort of permutations of the music.
And pull things in and out as different things are happening. Well, that's, I mean, there's so many questions on how that's actually conducted. And I think we've talked about this on the channel quite a lot in the past. You know, how do you deal with master bus processing when you're doing stems? That's a good question, actually.
I don't do master bus processing.
That is a very good answer.
Just because the sum of the stems must equate the full mix.
But are you mixing those on the console?
I always, when whatever I record, I print live mixes as we go.
Okay.
Also because the way that we mostly work, it might happen that in the morning we got the strings and in the afternoon we got the brass.
Yeah.
So the brass must be able to monitor whatever the strings played. So that's why I always, and that comes from Abbey Road, from the experience at Abbey Road, to make sure that the live mix might not be the best mix on earth, but it's definitely usable.
Yeah.
Then when it goes into the actual mixing, it's much easier to be in the box. Also because, of course, with the mixes must have been in the case of Audio Network, which is one of the clients, the mixes must be approved by them and then by the composers. So if there are tweaks or stuff like that, it's always I find it a lot easier and more practical.
Yeah.
And of course, it lets me, doing 4 mix reviews in the morning rather than one.
And you can.
Yeah, it's much easier to do.
And then they're digitally identical, I guess, each time. So you can make a change.
Yes. Yeah. What I like to do is whenever I use outboard, which is on everything that's not classical, I would say, I print it.
Yes.
Because 99% of the time we got the composers here, and if they'd like it, might as well.
I was thinking about this actually on the drive down, and I was thinking, why don't people print? Because I do that, print a lot of analog outboard. I think, why don't people print more? Because actually the amount of changes that you do need to come back to, it's not as high as you would think in terms of tweaking. Once you, especially with analog gear, because you can just do it and it just
would be if I did it.
There'd be plenty to revisit.
Maybe that's what it is. But then you just redo that section and just reprint it, don't you? But,
I always found it weird that, for example, even when I was working in London, you spend the whole day, say, in Studio 3, tracking your drums through Fairchilds and Neves and whatever. And then I give you the tracks, you go home, you put all the faders at 0, and that it doesn't sound nothing like what you were listening to.
Yes.
So I think that at the end, you save a lot of time in the mixing stage as well.
Yeah. And that's quite a sort of an old school approach as well, isn't it? To do that.
But that comes probably from the mentality of, I have to print the live mixes no matter what. Because there could be that once every blue moon that you got a project that doesn't have any budget, and the live mixes is what
is the mix.
It's more a live performance, which also makes the session map.
But you've never done that.
I never said you did. It happened. Not with you, but it happened.
The live mixes, there you go.
It happened with a client that can't say
it doesn't happen here.
Okay, fair enough.
But you never know, do you? You know, we were talking about backing up and emergence, or maybe it's just that one live mix is unbeatable. You know, it might have.
You might get the delay throw right, you know, that sort of stuff. And also, imagine, I don't know, picture this scene. You come down from the north, you've been driving 4 hours, is your first session in a proper studio. You got 4 hours on the way back. You might want something to listen to.
Oh yeah, that's fair enough. So you like have a monitor mix.
So the client
Rather than
compressor mix.
Yeah.
You know,
the rough mix .01.
Personally, I can't wait to listen to something else. But I don't.
Yeah.
This is it. I notice as bands get older or musicians get older and more experienced, they want to listen to what they've recorded less.
What's on Radio 4? No, I do actually, because I'm always curious. Whenever I've recorded something, you never quite know how it sounds until you hear it in your own environment.
Yeah.
And we know the environment here really well, so we don't need to. But the number of times I've come back and actually I want to just listen to it at home.
Yeah,
And
because
then you listen to it on some grotty old thing and go, oh God, why didn't I do this?
Yeah.
You know, and you suddenly notice things that you would never have noticed in another environment.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Is there a lot of recall? Do you do a lot of mixed tweaks, and how does that?
It depends on the project. Depends also, as you know, however many people are involved, the mix tweaks are exponential.
Find the problem with this mix.
Yeah. But luckily there is a great communication. Well, we are just mentioning Audio Network as one of the clients. You know, all the team at Audio Networks are very efficient in giving feedback. And it's very aimed. It's not like the classic joke, can you make it a bit more blue? There's something going on at 200 hertz that we don't like, or for the genre we need more brightness.
Right.
Because also, at the end of the day, they know the usage.
Yes.
And it could be the best mix on earth. If it doesn't work as an underscore or over a dialogue, people are not going to use it.
This is a really good question. When you're mixing for underscores, or do you approach it differently to mixing a record?
Well, in mixing a record, you know that there's just going to be that. So when it comes to underscores, you know that most of the stuff that we mix is instrumental.
Yeah.
So already the fact of not having vocals sort of frees up a bit of that range. But the way you approach it, the way personally I approach it is with Andrew as well. We listen to it most of the time very quiet in mono, and we, you know, you easily pick up stuff that jumps out too much, because if it's a lovely underscore and all of a sudden a triangle takes your face off.
And you've got no master bus processor, no master bus compression to kind of catch those.
I leave it to the mastering guys that do it definitely better than I do. Also, is the sort of music as well that, you know, you don't need to slam it as such.
Yeah.
Because already it will be compressed in the tele and that sort of stuff.
That, isn't it?
So I'd like to deliver, also because I'm a big fan of having the stems, which is different from multi-track. Sorry, I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's clarify that, because people might not be aware of what that means.
Yeah, it's the terminology that's got a bit, I don't know how and why, mixed up. So people think that stems is kick in, kick out, snap top, snap bottom. Stems is very much higher approach.
Families, I would say families of instruments.
If you were recording a small ensemble,
such as
well, you tell me.
So, for example, tomorrow we got the James Taylor Quartet.
Yeah.
So we got drums, 2 guitars, bass, piano.
So what would your stems be from this?
Drums, bass, 2 guitars, and piano. Yeah. And well, it's called the multi-track. You go into every single mic. So yeah, I was saying that the sum of my stems, so the sum of those 5. I said James Taylor Quartet, and there's 5 people, so it's a bit odd.
Yeah, don't worry.
But no,
He's from Rome.
sorry, it's not my first language. It should be the James Taylor EV-TET.
So
I think there's a conceptual thing.
Would add up.
Yeah, but I think there's a conceptual thing as well. So you're asking the difference in the approach, if you like, a commercial release. Well, of course, we do commercial releases all the time, and we do bands all the time, and we approach those like any other record label would in every possible respect. The difference might come when we're doing the mixes and versions, that we're then thinking pictorially.
Yeah.
So thinking, actually, why would somebody use this? And you might suddenly find there's just a great feel on an acoustic guitar, bass and drums.
Yeah.
That and just a great feel. You've got no melody. It's going to sit and do a job really well. So you'll give them that.
Yeah.
And you give them, and literally what we do is at the end, we've got the mix, and we'll sit there hitting mute buttons and seeing which versions.
I was
actually sound.
surprised. I was surprised that a bassoon solo was working in a version.
So I'd be very surprised.
Yeah.
But it just shows you, yeah, actually it does. And so quite often it'll be bizarre little things which an editor making a show is going to say, do you know what, that's really useful, or it feels quirky, or it's not overloading the picture. Because one of the mistakes I think a lot of that's very easy to make, I'm not saying other people make it, but very easy to make, is putting too much stuff in, which actually, if you're making music for TV, you've got sound effects, you've got you've got dialogue and all the rest of it. And actually what people need is clarity, and they need space in the mix so that it's easy to use. And as a man whose first projects were drones for Count Duckula back in the day, and those still get used now.
So I love that
After
show.
all these years, they're still using these drones. And it's almost embarrassing that they do, but they do, because now people know what those drones sound like.
Yeah. So what does it take to be a composer?
Better than me, no.
Well, look, if you worked on Count Duckula, then you can't.
No,
be
I think. Well, just speaking now, wearing my publisher's hat.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the first thing is to know how to work with people and to collaborate, because being a composer is, by it's the nature of the work, it's quite a solitary business, and therefore you're investing a lot of all the time your ideas and your thoughts into what you think is your perfect little jewel that you're going to send into your publisher. I know for myself, when I write something, I can't hear it. I don't have that ability. Lots of composers absolutely can be detached, listen to it and see it sort of pragmatically, if that's the right word. So I think that you have to sort of almost have a sort of a separate voice, which isn't too close to yourself. So when you get feedback, we don't like that bit, or we need to change this or whatever, you don't take that personally. And I think that's really hard to do. And I'm a massive admirer of composers. I think it's a really difficult thing to be creative and artistic and have ideas and then have to adjust them. And all I can say is that in 30 years of doing it, we almost never have a problem. Providing all parties know that we're respectful of what each other does. And that's the key, I think. But I think, when you say what does it take to be a composer, I think it's a huge amount of sort of humility and patience and understanding that what you're ultimately doing can't be your message to the world. It has to be usable in some way, or something that another person is going to enjoy.
The history of composition.
Unless you're a tiny percentage of people who will write their message to the world, and that's fine too.
Yeah. But I mean, even the history of people we consider to be great composers, a lot of that was, commission work for specific projects, and
well, it's like the story.
This out. Yeah.
But Bach was absolutely a library writer, no question about it. He had to produce his theme for Sunday evening, and oh God, but he never wrote. And the library music industry are giving opportunities to composers, which is the same as the benefactors and patrons of the classical composers in Vienna, Austria of their time. And there's no particular sort of ley line that people in Austria and Germany and Vienna and all the rest of it were born on to create the time when all these people who we now consider to be geniuses. Those people still are alive and doing these things now. It's just now they're probably writing for people like us.
Yes.
And the standard of, is genius too strong a word? I don't know. I think it is, because I look at it and know that I could never, ever do what some of the guys I work with do.
So here's a question. You say writing, and people might be watching going, oh, well, they must be writing on paper. What sort of proportion of your your composers write?
Well, for what the work we do, mostly they'll be reading, or writing, because they'll write probably on Sibelius.
Yeah.
Because we happen to be doing lots of strings and stuff, but we're a lot of the time we're doing strings for a pop band or hip hop or brass for hip hop the other day or whatever it might be. So those guys don't necessarily come from the reading side, but we brought in arrangers, orchestrators, whatever it might be, to do it. We work in the world of dots, but that's
It's
in no
always
way.
astounding for pop musicians, or it's like popular musicians, band musicians, and so on. See sort of classically trained musicians come in and they see the dots, and then this music comes out.
I'm a composer because it exists on dots.
Well, there's that, isn't it? And then music comes out of these dots, and that's quite a fascinating thing as well. And we were talking about that earlier in the kitchen. It's amazing that such a small thing can become something so real, and I think you were saying that one of the reasons that you work with live musicians rather than samples is because of that kind of,
The main difference is if you do everything live and real, it never dates, because it's always authentic. It's always just what it is. If you use samples, and I can remember I used to do commercials, and I remember doing tracks. I think, you can't tell the difference, and really believing in the moment guys, this sounds like a real orchestra.
Is this like?
And then I listen to it now, and I hang my head in shame.
You're always as good as the latest library you've got.
Yeah.
And they're great things for many.
I'm not knocking them, but it's not for building a catalogue of what we say is authentic music. The answer is not samples.
Yeah.
It can't be.
For sure.
And I know things that we recorded 22 years ago when we started are still used all the time now because they were recorded.
Because they were recorded.
Yeah,
definitely. Interesting. So, have you been open 2 years? Is it that long?
Well, it's open. I'm not sure how open we've really been. We haven't told anybody about it, really.
So thank you for coming. You found us.
Can we just declare ourselves open?
After 18 months and probably 200 sessions, I think we can.
Yeah, I mean, we most of our work has been Audio Network, but that's not to say that we can't do lots of other things as well. I shouldn't rely too much on dear old Audio Network, who've been as loyal and marvellous as the day is long. But actually, it's also good, with Steph, and we've got a young assistant here, Hester. It's great for them to have their own projects, which have nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And so we'd like to do more, really, and so we're just at the moment thinking about what sort of thing we want to do. And our main thing is we want to work with nice people. Actually, that's the most important. Nice people who will take what they do seriously, but are prepared to have a good time and have ideas. If we can find people like that.
And it's a nice environment as well to work in. I think you've kind of got a good kind of position, a good location, and you've thought about it well. So
people only ever talk about the alpacas, you know that. They come here. We've got these amazing microphones. We've got, Bob, bless him, and we've got all of God knows what, and Steinways coming out of our ears. People always go, but the alpacas.
Alpacas, there's cats, there's dogs, and all sorts. Well, and
doesn't necessarily all work together.
Is it? Hopefully, they don't knock anything.
You can have a row.
Is it? How much of a challenge is it to get people out of London to come and work with you?
None at all. I mean, that's been, in a sense, the biggest surprise. Is that musicians constantly say when they come here, God, it's easier than going to Abbey Road, because they don't have to get on the tube.
You can park.
They can park anywhere they like. They get in their car. I mean, let's face it, the M25 or the M11 can throw a wobbler, and it does happen. But actually, we've never really had a problem.
Yeah.
And funny enough, we found out a lot of musicians are more local than we thought.
Yeah.
Well, because they're going to live out of. Live in central London.
But the other thing, because we've got accommodation here, so we've got 9 bedrooms.
Yes.
So for certain projects, people like to come and stay.
Yeah.
And like tonight, actually, the composer's coming tonight because he wants to make sure he's definitely here in the morning.
Yeah.
And that certainly makes a
You're
difference.
on
And
that track.
I don't think we could do this without the accommodation, actually.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be possible.
Yeah, sort of hit the ground running and
Yeah.
have people. And it's nice as well, isn't it, just to get up and wander to the studio. That's
Yeah,
always a
yeah,
good
yeah, yeah,
experience.
yeah.
If people who haven't been to residential studios kind of miss out on that concept. But I know from working in a residential studio in the past, it's very tiring for the engineers. Well, how do you
Pull stumps at the end of the day.
balance that? Yeah.
So we're done, I think, are we?
Yeah. Usually the question that gets asked about 5:15 by this man is, would anyone like a glass of wine?
That brings things to
Oh,
a very
brilliant.
healthy
Brilliant.
And then 2 hours later, they'd be lucky if they could record a wobbleboard.
But do you have like kind of an ideal working day, or do you depend on?
Again, working mostly with union musicians
Yes.
is sort of the 10 hours, sort of the 10 to 8 kind of thing.
Yeah.
So from this point of view, I'm very lucky that we don't have to do all-nighters and stuff like that.
Some people will be saying 10 hours. It's a long day, isn't it? Or some people will be saying 10 hours. That's not a
Lucky
very long
you.
day.
No, we're not. I think we can be completely open about it. We're not in the business of going through all-night sessions.
Yeah.
You never make good decisions. You just
I
use
say this
crap
all the
at night.
time. Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're tired and you're not thinking straight. Stop it. Go to the pub. Go to bed and have new ideas in the morning. I just really think it's silly. This. We've all done it, but normally it's because there's a deadline. But we don't have any deadlines.
You look at some of these reggae records from the 60s and so on, and I've worked on quite a lot of that kind of reissues of that stuff. And they were working on half-hour slots. You would book the studio for a half hour, and you'd do you get your 2 takes of your backing track, and then you come back a week later and do your vocal
You
twice.
can book a lady for half an hour. It doesn't make it the best relationship. Does it? It's
I think focus, though, like having some focus rather than, like you say,
Yeah.
the late night things are just they're pretty much pointless. It's a very refined environment as well. So I can imagine, sort of. As you
Glass
say,
of wine.
a glass of wine or whatever, and you've got this.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things here that's really well
That's
thought
going to
out.
really screw up the recording. Sorry, Groucho's now sniffing the microphone. Darling, that's not going to help.
One of the things that's really, really nice here is the balance of, like I was saying, that sort of the reception rooms and the kitchen and the outdoor area and so on. So I think maybe that's kind of like it's definitely an experience to be here.
It's very interesting how different musicians we know well and we've worked with for years and years and years. When we worked with them in London at Abbey Road, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it's different. The atmosphere is completely different. And we're very strict with ourselves to adhere religiously to the union rules.
I was just going to ask you, actually, sort of like, do they just get up and walk out like they would in a London studio?
The people I work with never would do that anyway, but then I wouldn't put them in a situation where they would have to. So, but in London, by and large, musicians, but they wouldn't say, "Look, don't worry about it."
Yeah.
And they do here. Frequently say, "Don't worry about it." Of course,
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it,
yeah.
to do an overdub or something.
Yeah.
But I always say no, because the last thing I want to be is this studio that's playing fast and wrong. The rules, So we always actually say no. We're going to do absolutely meticulously by the book. And some we have had clients that why, but we're quite firm on it.
They have mortgages to pay, and
and it's fair.
Yeah.
The rules,
Yeah,
they've been carefully negotiated. We've got our own agreement, our bespoke agreement, and there's a bespoke thing for this studio in the union agreement.
Yeah.
And it's been carefully negotiated by all sides in good faith, and therefore you live up to that arrangement in my view.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure there'll be, most musicians will be absolutely over the moon.
And if they're not, there's always that axe there.
There is an axe. There's an axe that's
which can be used for negotiating.
If they're ready
the
to
axe
go.
that's been.
I should just explain. It's the only thing that
Can
when
we-
we
can we-
put,
can we
get the
touch-
axe, see if it works. Groucho, prepare yourself. So this was the only thing that never left the studio when we were building it. It was in the woodshed, which is in booth 2 originally, and it was just moved round by the builders. all the way through the building process. And then suddenly we thought it was a bit of a shame. It's like the Ravens in the Tower of London. We think if it went out, the whole place would fall down.
Groucho would leave as well.
So long as you don't have a drummer in a mood, you know.
Axe murdering drummers.
They got good chops, those drummers.
Hey.
Oh dear.
Very good. He's here all week.
So what are you looking forward to? What's coming up in the studio, and what
What have you got?
any interesting projects
Well, we're doing
that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think we can talk about most things. I mean, we're doing some lovely stuff on this week with the Britain's Symphonia on Friday, and we're doing some things with Tim Garland.
Yeah.
We've done a lot with Tim Garland and Jason Rebella on the sort of jazz side of life. We're doing James Taylor. We were saying earlier that's tomorrow. God, my mind immediately goes blank. We're doing some things with John Rutter,
Right.
and he's a remarkable man who is still, fascinated by the process of recording. He came down here the other day because he's decided he wants to learn how to record in Atmos, which I think when you've been in the business for as long as he has, that's quite something. When you're still thinking that way.
Excited about it.
And we do a lot of sessions with American composers, and they join by audio movers. So
Which is awesome.
I mean, it really is. I mean, so we've got a whole lot of composers based in LA, and literally they'll be wearing their gym jams sometimes, because it's the middle of the night, and they'll just log on.
Listen.
And we also have Zoom as well, so they can see what's going on. And we have it set up so they're automatically talking to everyone. This is my big strict rule. There's an old thing, I don't know if you know, in sort of classical orchestral music, the producer talks to the conductor who talks to the orchestra. Bollocks to that. I'm just not interested in that. So we always have a rule that everybody talks to everyone else all the time.
Right.
So that there's no secrets, and you save so much time. I can never understand why people say, I knew ever talk to the conductor, It just seems like a very odd way to behave.
That makes sense.
And likewise for them. So they can be sitting over there, hit the space bar, they're just talking to everybody.
Brilliant.
Yeah, works really well.
So let's say I wanted to book a session and do an album here.
Are you nice?
Well, that's I don't know about the
Are you going to be nice to us?
viewers, but yeah. So people can get in touch with you. Check out the studio. Those are websites.
Yes, schoolfarmstudios.com. That's right, isn't it? Yes. And pictures of the accommodation and all of that on there as well. Get in touch, and if we can help, we'd love it. One of the things I like that we say on the site is, we between us, Steph and I have been doing it a long time, and we know a lot of people. If you want someone who plays Bolivian sheephorn, we probably know someone who does. So we know so many people, arrangers, orchestrators, copyists. All sorts of different people, and we all say if we know them, so do you.
Yeah.
So people come. So people sometimes are anxious about a recording because they're not quite sure how they're going to bolt it all together, and we love helping with that stuff or recommending certain people who can help with certain areas.
Brilliant.
And I don't think studios on the whole do that, and it's nice to do that. And then from our point of view, it makes us feel more involved in the project, and I think we can add more value that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
School Farm
Welcome.
Studios. Check it out. It's absolutely awesome here.
He says all the right things.
He does, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he?